We are living in a very fascinating time, watching biblical prophecy just play out in the news and on social media. It's incredible. It's bewildering. It's almost so much that I think a lot of people they're like an ostrich, they just stick their head in the sand and they act like it's just a coincidence, right? It's almost too much that it becomes the normal in a weird way. And there was something that kind of blew my mind recently that came out that I thought, that is literally what Jesus said would happen, literally. And I want to kind of start by saying it is truly an honor to have God choose us for a time as this. And you need to see it that way. You need to see that it is an honor that God chose you specifically to be a part of his second coming. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And the thing I'm talking about, I just saw this the other day, and it literally made me laugh out loud, because what we are seeing is that in the media and few news outlets, mostly tabloids, be very clear, but what we are seeing is that a British anthropologist, a man named Dr. Paul Warner, has researched the inner rooms, the inner chambers of the Great Pyramid. And throughout his research, he has found that a sealed inner chamber beneath the southern passage of the Great Pyramid contains Jesus' body. And the Ark of the Covenant. So he has submitted this data to the Council of Antiquities in Egypt. And this is where it gets fascinating. And also referring to this as a scientific revolution. So how is this biblical prophecy? Because, the timeline obviously doesn't match up from when the pyramids were built and when Jesus was here. Also, it would completely cancel out his omnipotence, his ability to resurrect from the dead and ascend into heaven. So obviously it just if this was a real thing, it would cancel out Christianity altogether. But Jesus said this exact thing would happen. Here's where it gets really fascinating. And I love studying the words in scripture to kind of say, well, what is that word? So we're going to go to Matthew 24. And all of Matthew 24 and all of Matthew 25, both chapters, is one single conversation that Jesus is having with his disciples about the end times. Because they asked him specifically, well, what will it look like when you come back? Like, how will we know that you're coming back? And he goes on for 2 chapters talking about what that looks like and giving parables on how we should be behaving, and then gets into some literal things on what it'll be like when he returns. So we're going to go to Matthew 24, and we'll start in verse 25. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. Now, this is where it gets incredibly fascinating, because when I've read that, I always assume what they were saying is like around Jerusalem. When they say, hey, he's out in the desert, or when he's in the inner rooms, I was kind of assuming, well, this would be like the inner chamber of the temple, but this is not what this is described. Jesus did not use the word for the inner room of the temple. What he used is a word called timaiosis, which is a store chamber or a secret chamber. It's kind of like a secret storage chamber. So what he's saying here is and then also that word for desert is more like kind of like a deserted wasteland. So when they say come to the wasteland, like, Egypt, and look, he is in the inner storage chambers, these secret rooms that are just being revealed, do not go. So literally Jesus Christ is saying this report that we can read about right now, when you see that thing happening, see, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, those inner secret chambers, do not believe it. For as lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. It's, I would argue, mind-blowing, but we're just seeing this happen every day with something else. You have to wake up to the reality of what Jesus is saying it will be like in the end times. And then open your eyes, and here we are. And I'm going to close this as a part of this, but this particular news report, but a lot of people, when I say, here's a sign that we're in the end times, they say, well, wait a second. Jesus said, no one knows. So I want to address that real quick, because when he says that also in Matthew 24, like it's the same conversation. So for 2 chapters, Jesus is telling the disciples exactly what it would look like. Now, why would he do that? Why, like, if it's just something that, why would he do that? So we can see the signs. Because immediately following what he just said about the desert and the storerooms, he gives the parable of the fig trees, and it says that therefore you can know the season. And then he says, but no one knows the day or the hour. So what Jesus is telling the disciples for 2 whole chapters is this is what the season of the end times looks like. And here's how you know, and you should know, that you are in the season. Nobody knows the day or the hour, but we do know the season. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branches has already come tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the very doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all things are fulfilled. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But of that day and hour no one knows, no, not even the angels, heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important that we know the season, because immediately following this conversation, well, in the middle of this conversation, but immediately following what he just said, he immediately gets into parables, and then all of chapter 25 is how we should be behaving. So it's important, that we understand that he's coming, and we should be behaving a certain way. It's not just knowing for the sake of knowing. It's knowing for the sake of behaving.